Democrats have been waiting a very long time to go to conference on our budget. In fact, it has now been 73 days. And until recently, we've gotten pretty used to Senate Republicans just simply standing up and saying no. For months, Republicans have been offering a lot of excuses for why they don't want to go to conference on the budget. They have said they want a pre-conference framework, which, by the way, is what a budget is. They have said they wouldn't allow us to go to conference unless we guaranteed that the wealthiest Americans and biggest corporations would be protected from paying a penny more in taxes. They said they didn't want a bipartisan conference to take away the leverage they have on the debt ceiling. And then they called for a do-over, which actually my ranking member on the budget called for again this morning, to bring up the House budget, have 50 hours of debate, a whole new round of unlimited amendments, go through the process all over again. And they did this after they praised the very open and thorough floor debate we had on the Senate budget. So, Madam President, the story keeps changing. But even as some Republicans were focused on finding excuses to move us closer and closer to this crisis rather than have a budget deal, we have a number of Republicans who are now joining with us to call on regular order. Senator Coburn said that blocking conference is, and I quote, not a good position to be in. Senator Boozman said, quote, he would very much like to see a conference. Senator Wicker said weeks ago that, quote, by the end of next week, we should be ready to go to conference. So we've known for a while that blocking regular order, especially after calling for it so eagerly just a matter of months ago, was not sitting well with a number of our Republican colleagues. And now, according to Politico, quote, more Republicans appear to favor heading to conference than blocking it. Madam President, I welcome that. We need to move this to conference. It is the regular order. It will allow us to solve our country's problems, and we truly need a process to allow us to deal with our nation's problems. Madam President, Senator McCain is on the floor, and I want to thank him because he understands the importance, not just for this bill, but for all legislation in the Senate, that we come here, we compromise, we fight hard for what we believe in, but at the end of the day, just saying my way or the highway, even if you're a small minority, doesn't move this country to the place where we need it to get to, that isn't a crisis by management places. And I thank him for taking a lead and calling for regular order. And he has said that Republican preconditions like demanding the conference agree to not raise the debt ceiling or raise taxes are absolutely out of line and unprecedented. Senator Collins joined us on the floor a few weeks ago to say that even though there's a lot we don't see eye to eye on, we should at least go to conference and make our best effort to get a deal. Madam President, I couldn't agree more. The stalling that we have seen is, as some have said on their side, a little bizarre and ironic, to say the least, especially after I would remind everyone 50 hours of debate, innumerable amendments that took us way into the early hours. We offered everybody the chance to speak out, and after that session was over, many of our Republican colleagues came to me personally and thanked me for finally having an open process. If they want us to have an open process, then they have to take that process and take it to the next step. So, Madam President, I am deeply concerned. We are moving towards another manufactured crisis this fall. We have our appropriations committees that need to move forward. The country is very clearly tired of this country being managed by crisis, and we just had a budget hearing this morning where our witnesses, both Republicans and Democrats alike, said that moving us to a manufactured crisis would impact this economy in a horrific way this fall. We do not need to have that happen. I want to go to conference. Do I want to have a compromise? Not really. I love where I stand, but I've been here a long time. You don't get everything you want, but you do have to compromise in order to move the country forward. And I am willing to go to conference with my counterpart, Chairman Ryan, who's on a very different page than I am, and find our compromise and be willing to move that forward here in the Congress so we can get to a place that allows us to be able to lead this country again. So, Madam President, I think we're at a very critical point. I see Senator McCain is on the floor. I'd be happy to yield to him for a comment.
Madam President.
Senator from Arizona.
I understand that one of my colleagues who will object is coming to the floor, so perhaps I would reserve the right to object on his behalf, even though I'm in stark disagreement. But instead, I'll just make a comment, and I'm sure that my colleague will, on this side of the aisle, will voice an objection when he arrives. He's here.
Would yield that I can go ahead and offer the unanimous consent this time, and we can move from there?
Yeah, if it's okay with the Senator, because we know what's going to happen, I'd just like to make remarks, and then Senator from Florida will make the same argument that we've made the last few days, and fortunately I don't have to listen again. For 4 years, members on this side of the aisle argued strenuously that we were doing a great disservice to the country by not taking up and debating and amending a budget that would then go to conference with the House, the other side of the aisle, the other side of the Capitol, the House of Representatives, and then we would do what we expect and unfortunately every family in America has to do, and that is to pass a budget under which we would be guided in our authorization and appropriations process. Now, my colleague from Florida will come to the floor and say that we have amassed a debt because of the budget. Well, we didn't have a budget for 4 years. So how can you argue that the fact that we may go to conference on a budget, that somehow that would be responsible for the debt? Obviously, it's nonsense. Obviously, it's nonsense. Just as, frankly, it was nonsense when the same group of senators said we shouldn't even debate gun measures in light of a tragedy that took place in Connecticut and another tragedy that took place in Tucson, Arizona. Didn't even want to take up and debate a way that some of us had ideas to try to keep the weapons out of the hands of criminals and the hands of mentally ill. So now we have a Senate where we refuse to move forward on issues and have open debate and discussion and votes. I always believed in the years I've been here with Republican and Democrat majorities that the way we are supposed to function is to say, okay, let's give it our best shot and let's do the best we can and let's have votes. One of the things that was our objections, again, to the majority leader was that he wouldn't let us have votes on amendments. We had, I've forgotten how many, votes on the budget that lasted till, I believe, around 7 o'clock in the morning. So the opponents of moving forward on anything can't argue we didn't have votes on the budget, can't argue that they were blocked from whatever amendment that they wanted to have voted on. So now we're faced with a situation where we will not go to conference, and I want to tell my colleagues that continue to do this that with my strenuous objections, the majority will become frustrated, and the majority can change the rules of the Senate. They can do that. And I must say that although I would strenuously object to a change in the rules, I can understand the frustration that many of my friends on the other side of the aisle feel at a failure of a simple process of going to conference when the majority of on the other side of the Capitol is of our party. That's really very difficult to understand, unless you take the word of one of my colleagues who came to the floor and said, I don't trust Democrats and I don't trust Republicans. Let me repeat what he said. I don't trust Democrats and I don't trust Republicans. It's not a matter of trusting Democrats or Republicans. What this is a matter of is whether we will go through the legislative process that people sent us here to do. And I've probably lost many more times than I have won. But I've been satisfied in the times that I have lost that I was able to make my argument, was put it to the will of the body, and it was either accepted or rejected. That's how people, school children all of America, expect us to behave. That's the way our Constitution is written. That's what this body is supposed to be about. So when we have a situation, by the way, Madam President, this is the last time I'm going to come to the floor on this exercise because it's obviously a fruitless kind of effort until something changes. And obviously that's not going to happen in the short term. Now, my friends on the will be saying, they're Reagan Republicans. You're a Reagan Republican. Well, I was here when Ronald Reagan was President of the United States. President Reagan, rightly or wrongly, passed amnesty for 3 million people who were in this country illegally. Ronald Reagan sat down with Tip O'Neill, and they saved Social Security from bankruptcy. Ronald Reagan sat down with the Democrats, and they agreed in ways of increasing revenues and cutting spending. Ronald Reagan's record is very clear. And by the way, it was one of an assertive role of the United States of America and leadership in the world, and not come home to Fortress America. So sometimes when I hear my colleagues here talk about how they are Ronald Reagan Republicans, I don't think Ronald Reagan would have disagreed that we should have a budget. We should have a budget to guide the legislative agenda of the Congress of the United States. So as I said, I won't be coming back to the floor again while my colleagues object, and I see my colleague from Utah that was so unfamiliar with what we do here that he claimed it was behind closed doors in back rooms, and the fact is the budget conference is on C-SPAN and open to all. So I can just say to my colleagues, this is not a proud moment for me as we block a process that was agreed to and enacted for many, many years, was not enacted for 4 years over the strenuous objections of myself and my colleagues that we did not enact a budget. We enacted a budget after an all-night marathon of vote after vote after vote on literally any issue. And there was not a single vote proposed by my colleagues here that said that we can't agree to a lifting of the debt limit. Now, the floor was open for that amendment. And I don't know why my colleagues now view this as the criteria for us moving forward on the bill. So I wish them luck, and I will not be coming to the floor again to object to their objection, and we'll let the American people make a judgment. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Washington.
Madam President, I want to thank the Senator from Arizona for his very heartfelt remarks. I know he and I don't agree on a lot, but we do agree that we want this country to work because the alternative isn't great. And the way for this country to work is for us to come together with our differences of opinion and move forward. And that's what the conference committee is all about. So, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 33, H-Con Res 25, the amendment which is at the desk, the text of S-Con Res 8, the budget resolution passed by the Senate, be inserted in lieu thereof, that H-Con Res 25 as amended be agreed to, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table. The Senate insist on its amendment, request a conference with the House on the disagreeing votes of the two houses, and chair be authorized to appoint conferees on the part of the Senate. Following the authorization, two motions to instruct conferences be in order from each side. Motion to instruct relative to the debt limit and motion to instruct relative to taxes and revenue. There be 2 hours of debate equally divided between the two leaders or their designees prior to votes in relation to the motions. Further, that no amendments be in order either of the motions prior to the votes, and all of the above occurring with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam President.
Senator from Florida.
Madam President, reserving the right to object. First of all, I want to thank the senator from Arizona for protecting my right to object in my absence before I made it to the floor. And just to set the record straight, I don't think that we object to moving to budget conference. We object to moving to budget conference and having the debt limit raised within that conference. So I would ask the senator if she would consider unanimous consent that she modify her request so that it not be in order for the Senate to consider a conference report that includes reconciliation instructions to raise the debt limit.
Madam President, if the senator heard my request, I said that we would consider a motion to instruct relative to the debt limit as part of our agreement to move to conference. So the senator would be allowed to make his voice heard at that time, and I would object to making it a requirement without a vote of the Senate that says the majority agree with that. So I would object to his amendment and again ask for consent on the agreement that
Objection is heard. Is there objection to the original request?
Madam President.
Senator from Florida.
I object.
Madam President.
Objection is heard.
Madam President.
The Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to S. Conres 18.
Clerk will report.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 18, providing for the use of the catafalque situated in the Exhibition Hall of the Capitol Visitor Center in connection with memorial services to be conducted in the United States Senate Chamber for the Honorable Frank R. Lautenberg, late a Senator from the state of New Jersey.
Is there an objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that concurrent resolution be agreed to. The motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
Madam President, I now ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to consideration of S-Res 160.
Clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 160, relative to the memorial observances of the Honorable Frank R. Lautenberg, late a Senator from the state of New Jersey.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motions to reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate.
Without objection. Under the previous order, the Senate stands in recess until 2:15 p.m.
The Senate in a recess now so lawmakers can attend their weekly party caucus meetings. They're back at 2:15 p.m. Eastern. It's possible that the Senate will get back to the Farm Bill at that time. A reminder that the 2013 Congressional Directory is out. It's a handy guide to the current Congress.